All right, here we go. Everyone seeing the right screen here?
Looks good.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to our first 2025 Symbiota support group. Glad that you tuned in. This is going to be a pretty laid back meeting, lots of discussion, but I'm just going to record the first part of this where we're walking through kind of some FAQs for the informational section. So first we're going to do some announcements. And you probably have seen this already if you interact with any SIGNET portals, and I'll talk a little bit more about SIGNET soon. But they have all been upgraded to Symbiota 3.1. Thanks for your feedback as you've been sending us that. That's really helpful. So most of them have a new look and feel. They're a little more responsive, and they have kind of new header images and updated, not 90s gray menus, which is great. So hopefully you're enjoying those. And again, let us know what issues you run into as you're dealing with those. The code updating doesn't influence the data at all because we're updating the code part, not the database part for the most part. So it doesn't affect your data. Here's just a couple of snapshots of our rebranded or restyled portals. So hopefully you're enjoying those. A couple of 2025 announcements and activities coming up. I hope you've marked your calendars for Spinach, the Society for the Preservation of Natural History Collections meeting. That's at the end of May this year in Lawrence, Kansas. And as that is our home institution for the Symbiota Support Hub now, we're going to have a full showing there and lots of Symbiota folks. So come and say hi to us. And we're hoping that there will be a workshop there about back-end use of Symbiota, so a little bit more like advanced workings of Symbiota. So stay tuned for more information about that. And you probably got this information via email if you've been to a previous botany meeting, but just note that the botany meetings this next year got moved. They're no longer going to be in Tucson because of some construction. It's actually going to be in Palm Springs now, but it's going to be the same dates. So again, mark your calendars. We'll have some Symbiota folks there too. That's July 26th through 30th in Palm Springs. And then we have BioDigicon. This is in the place of the Digital Data Conference that iDigBio puts on every year. It's kind of a combined big shindig that's going to happen in Washington, D.C. this year. So that's going to be really exciting, really big. Definitely mark your calendars. We're hoping to have some talks and workshops there from the Symbiota end as well. All right, and since it's 2025, we just wanted to take a couple minutes to reintroduce some of us on the Symbiota Support Hub. So I'm going to point to Lindsay, have her introduce herself, and then Jen, and then I'll reintroduce myself, just so you get a little more background about like who we are, why we're here, and what our specialties are in, and where we're physically located.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Walker. I am the community manager for the Symbiota Support Hub. I am physically located in Los Angeles, California, not Kansas, though I do work for KU. My background is in collections and specifically paleontology collections. I've been with the Symbiota Support Hub for about almost 3 years now, which is kind of crazy to think that it's been that long. It's been a wonderful journey. And I do things like answer help desk tickets, help plan events like this with Katie, do a lot of things on the back end like sustainability planning, stuff that you don't necessarily see that's going on, but it's happening in the background. And I enjoy fielding these questions and collaborating with you all as questions arise. So when you email help@symbiota.org, I get the emails, Katie gets the emails, and we're there to help. So thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, and hi everybody. My name is Jen, and I am a professor of biology at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. And I am one of the creators of the Symbiota Support Hub. And the idea behind this group was that I manage a collection. I'm not paid to do that, and I have no paid staff at my university to help me do that. and as is the case for many collections around the country. And so the idea and the argument behind having a couple people housed in one place was that they could serve as the IT support for everyone, the help desk support for everybody, the data curation support for everybody. And so that project allowed us to hire Lindsay and Katie and also Greg, who does some behind the scenes IT stuff. And they are now all based at Kansas, and they do things that are useful to you. And we always want to be useful to you. So that's how the Symbiota support group came along. The idea is that you could offload some of the burden of curation and training and data management to Lindsay and Katie, and they can help you just like make your life easier trying to do the things that you do every day. And then Symbiota and all of the data portals are, in my opinion, to my work and my life. And it's this interesting problem of how to sustain these portals when they're sort of like a common good. Who pays for the commons and how is it maintained? And so this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to make sure that we just have really, well supported and thriving communities of practice surrounding these portals. It's hard to quantify the good that they do and the role that they serve in a lot of cases. And so I am constantly trying to hustle to keep these guys employed and keep the portal sustained. And we will need your help along the way to figure out good, sustainable strategies for, keeping the lights on for everybody.
Thanks, Jen. Great way to start 2025 thinking about sustainability since the iDigBio grant ends next year. That's coming up. I'm Katie Pearson. I'm the project and data manager for the Symbiota Support Hub. My background is in botany. I have done some herbarium curation work. I've also done some research using phenological data extracted from herbarium specimens, digitized herbarium specimens. And I worked for Jen starting in 2018, I guess it is, to manage a digitization thematic collections network. So that was just a project across multiple California herbaria, created a bunch of digitized data and the CCH2 database, and then transitioned to managing not just CCH2, but a bunch of portals, and then kind of managing what the Symbiota Support Hub is becoming as a sustainable helping entity for a huge group of really great people. So that's my role. Just wanted to remind everyone because we have new people coming in our Symbiota community all the time, and we really love to see you all coming and make sure that we have been introduced. All right, so I'm going to open it up for a little bit of feedback at this point before we step into the FAQs. Because we mentioned Symbiota 3.1 and how it's been rolled out to the SciNet portals, we wanted to take a minute to see if anyone has any specific Symbiota 3.1 feedback, any frustrations that you're running into, and particularly some feedback also about the record search form. So I actually wanted to take a little bit of a vote here. So the record search form, as you might have experienced now, at least the new form, has these different boxes that contain different criteria. And these criteria used to be all on the same page. Let me bring up another. Okay, so if I go to the new search, it looks like this. And on the old search, it used to be, oops, I shouldn't have. There we go. The old search, you had to go through this page first and then go to this page where everything's listed on one page. And in the new search, you have the ability to do all that in a single interface. One question that has come up is whether all of these should be expanded by default or whether they should be condensed by default. So condensed makes it a little bit easier to just kind of look at on the page, but expanded means that you don't have to guess which box your query goes into. So this is kind of an informal voting, but I wanted to get a vote of who thinks that how they are right now is the way they should be, with just the taxonomy one expanded and everything else condensed. And the alternative one is going to be, should they all be expanded? And then we can put in your other ideas of like, well, these ones should be expanded and these ones should be contracted. Put those in the chat. So who thinks that they should be as they are right now? So you can use, like, you can do this, or you can use a react. I think there's a react. You can raise your hand, or you could thumbs up right now. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I might have to look at this somewhere else. Right?
You might have to just look at the chat.
I know. I think I got about like 8. We're looking at about 8. Okay, and then versus, now everyone put your hands down. Versus everything expanded. So if you think everything should be expanded, put your hands up or do your thumbs up. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think a lot of people are putting it in the chat. Okay, put your vote in the chat as well because I'll be able to download that. Great. Well, thanks for all that feedback. That's just a thing that we keep on mulling back and forth, and there's arguments for either way, and we're just like, what do the people want? The people want it both ways, as always, but hopefully we can help a majority. Okay, let's walk through some frequently asked questions that we got from this last year, or things that we found ourselves needing to explain and that we thought would be useful to talk about here.
Hey, Katie, before you
Yeah.
just jump into that, I guess it is worth saying that just so everybody understands the landscape of Symbiota portals, most Symbiota is open source code. Anyone can download it and install an instance of a portal anywhere they want. It has turned out that in the development of most of the large portals that we all use and know and love, those are stored on servers at ASU/Kansas and are managed by this group of people in the Symbiota Support Hub, meaning they have back-end access because they can go into the server and like do back-end magic tasks and stuff. But like some portals have great management. They have a portal manager, they have a steering committee. There are people who make decisions about that portal. And other portal communities are not so well organized, and the curators and the users are using it all the time, of course, for their own collections, but there's not really like a strong governing structure for changes. All that being said, we view portals as owned by the curators who are managing their collection within that portal. And so the portal can be whatever that group of people wants it to be. And the people in the Symbiota Support Hub will try to help you facilitate that within reason, because obviously we can't do like a whole bunch of software development to meet the needs of your portal. But a lot of groups get together and write grants to change their portal for however they want. So for my California phenology project, we needed phenological traits being scored in the portal. So we did development for that. The nice thing with the code is that if one group pays to get something developed, it's pretty easy to perpetuate that to the other portals. So I just want to throw that out there. You can make your portal whatever you want it, but keep that in mind when you're writing proposals. An issue that has come up that many of you on this call are familiar with is that you want the ability to hide data within your portal. Don't make it public right away because it's either messy or students or you haven't processed it or something, or maybe you're not allowed to even let that record go out into the public. Anyway, that's something that may be developed really soon through a funded project. So it's changes like that, one group funds it and then it perpetuates out to the rest of the community. So small changes like what your header picture is and stuff, that's easy for us to change.
I think the changes to this search page were funded partially through Neon and then partially through the USDA. Like the USDA gave us the developer who was able to deploy them into the public code. So these aren't just things that are happening because we have a spare time. Um, and one thing I wanted to note that I saw going in the chat is that there is an expand all button already here. If right here at the top, if you just click that, then you'll be able to see everything at once. So I saw that Tiana says that changes her vote. All right. I think I saw a question in the chat. Let's see. At UCR, we are one of a few snapshot herbaria. I have resolved long name issues and our snapshot is loaded perfectly. Any changes for us lone wolf snapshotters? Um, I don't think you'll see that many changes just in the search interface. Let me know if there are any particular changes you're questioning about. Okay, I forgot to pause and ask if anyone had any other 3.1 feedback. Any other 3.1 feedback?
My question was, Katie, I think similar to the UCR snapshot issue, because we just gotten used to accessing our data in the old one, and then the new one's up. And so we're partly just, getting used to it. But you mentioned that you would first choose the collection and then do all your other searches. And now when we're using 3.1, it seems we do a search and then somehow we keep losing. We just want to search our collection and we keep having to pick that over and over again. And so we just sort of gave up because isn't there the button where you can say use the classic option? And we're just going back and using the classic because we were just under time pressure and not just jumping into 3.1 very well. I mean, we do intend to learn to get it down, but that was a problem.
I think what I recommend when anyone is trying to search only their collection, you probably would be better served by not using the public search, but instead using the search that's in your collection specifically. So like when you log in and you go to my profile, and specimen management, you have access to like some really specific searching tools that are more powerful than the ones in the public search. And so you might be better served by doing that anyways. If you're trying to do downloads, I know it's a little bit different because you can't download from this edit interface. You have to use the exporter tool. But this one will, by default, always only search your collection. So that might be a little bit more specific to you.
Yeah, I guess that means I have to set up all my student workers people with accounts because I don't necessarily, well, I guess if I log in and just get my password in, I don't want to tell them my password, obviously, but I could get them in and then they can work. But
yeah, they could be editors.
Yeah, so I need,
One thing that
coming attractions.
There's two things that I make my students who are in there for real create accounts, but you can also create a general account and then all your students just have one user account as an editor. And, and it's like your herbarium student intern or something like that. And then you just use that for all of them. You can't track then who specifically messed up, but it's a nice way to get them in.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I have like two, and I don't care which one made the mistake. It's better if I don't know.
Okay.
Jen, can you do more than one at a time when you do it that way?
Like more than one person logged in?
You can certainly do that because I've been logged in on multiple computers before. If they were both making edits at the same time under the exact same user, like maybe there's a problem there. Okay. I don't know. We'd break the internet at that point.
I think that you can do that. I think you can make edits in two places. We don't have a really robust like log the other user out thing. We're not Netflix here.
You do have the locked records though.
That's true. You can't edit the same record at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's why it won't break. Exactly.
I'm seeing another question. Herrick asks, what's the timeline for sorting regional herbaria consortia toward the top of the corresponding collections list? We know that's a thing that broke in 3.1. Previously, your portal's collections would show up at the top of that list, but now it's just alphabetical. We have that fixed. We just have to roll out that code to everyone once it's in a full hotfix. So, couple weeks. I am taking a look at all the other
Jennifer?
comments.
Jennifer's got her hand up.
Okay, I'll go ahead. And I'm wearing my winter wear because we're having weather inside our building rather. I mean, we have it outside too, but it's mostly inside.
Oh no!
It's in the 40s. It's been this way for months. The part hasn't come in yet. But anyway, so I think this is a 3.1 thing, but I'm not entirely sure. So when I upload data sets, I usually do, put in an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file. And for taxonomy, I usually do sign name. And I use that as a way to check to see if like names were spelled correctly often, because the authorship will not fill in if it's misspelled or something. But I found that like nearly half of the names didn't autofill an authorship. So I feel like it's using the taxon backbone differently, possibly. I don't know if that could be the case.
When did you do this upload?
And it was December. So it was like, yeah, sometime.
I would do it again because we had some issues over the break and we had to rebuild all of the indices, which I think is what will help refer to the taxonomic thesaurus. So let us know if you keep on having that issue.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, that
Great.
would be kind of an important one to fix. Mike, you said, do you want to talk about maps? Do you have something in particular you want to talk about?
I have a few things. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
People may have noticed that when you zoom in on the current map, the place names remain quite small. Notice that problem? As
Yep.
opposed to Google Maps. And sometimes it's almost, you can't see where you are. I think it's better in some of the formats. I think it's worse in like the topo or satellite mode. But anyway, that is an issue that could be improved. I just wanted to get your take on that. And also, I think we have long desired county boundaries to be displayed. Is that in the works as well? That's a couple of things, yeah.
Yeah, so both of those issues came up with the switch to leaflet maps or the open source maps. And I have definitely been frustrated by the small font issue. And we've talked about it with the developers, and apparently it's due to like the resolution of the maps that we have access to or something like that. So it's a slightly more complicated fix than I was even thinking it would be, but that's definitely on our radar. And then regarding county boundaries, I think we just need to find an open source layer that has county boundaries on it. I don't know if we've found one. That's pretty much our limitation.
Let's make sure to ask Logan about that tomorrow. He's like our map wizard.
He knows about the font one, but I don't know if we've asked him about the county one.
Okay.
Allison asks, oh yeah. Well, Allison is going to be talked to by Lindsay, but Allison's question is, what is the status of Symbiota websites for fossils? Lindsay can give us an update about that.
Sure, yeah. So Symbiota for a long time hasn't supported paleontological data like by and large. There is a little bit of support in a few portals, but we've been working on expanding that functionality. It is quite a big project and undertaking, but we're hoping to officially roll that out by the end of this year. And so, Allison, I have more info I can send you about that through the help desk, but there is a portal coming, and it is funded through an NSF project. So stay tuned, more on that to come, is sort of the long and short of it right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're so stoked because we have an expert here on paleo who is helping us push this forward. So, all right. Any other questions, feedback, thoughts? Oh, Al.
Sorry, let me unmute. And given the map situation, I have real trouble sliding my cursor over a given point and being able to click on it to get data. Am I the only one having this problem?
Is anyone else having that problem?
I'm not sure about that, Al, but Katie, remind me, I think still if they're 2 points very near one another, you can't separate them like you used to be able to. I think you called it the spider type of where you would click and they would expand out like a spider.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I checked, that's not working anymore.
I thought we fixed that, but it's possible that it's in the pipeline and hasn't made it
Okay.
out to the portal yet.
But Al, I don't think I've had that problem. That's the problem I've had. 2 points could be very close and you can only see one.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Feel free to send us a video, Al, if you're like, man, I just keep on getting this problem. Okay, Paula asks, can you talk about how GitHub problems, questions, or issues are addressed? For example, does the issue have to be one common to more than one user before it moves up in the queue? We don't really have, to be honest, a process about it has to get so many votes before it moves forward. Often what we try to do is we have our collection of GitHub issues and we're trying to think about how those might fit in with projects that we already have funded or that we're working on. And then of course there's tons of things like bugs and aesthetic fixes that affect everyone that we kind of expedite to the top of the line. But there's not a rigorous process in the or right now.
But I can add to that a little bit. Like we as a group at Kansas are writing a number of NSF proposals that are they're not collections-based proposals, they're like open software management proposals through some different NSF programs than we're used to. And so what we've done while writing those proposals is we look at all of the feature request issues and we use your feedback to say, hey, we need funding to develop these tools because look, everybody in the community is requesting them. And so unfortunately, a lot of wish list items are going to sit there for a long time because there isn't funding for a programmer to work on them. But knowing that they're there is really important so that we can scoop up as many as possible. And a lot of times we get approached by people who are putting in new digitization proposals and they'll say, okay, here's kind of my idea. And then we'll look at that list and we'll say, okay, well, include these in your proposal as well, because they relate to your project and they'll also serve this greater good. So
yeah, that's a great point. And it's not because like we have our favorite things and we don't want to develop your things. It's because developer time is super expensive and we have a bunch of things that are in the queue already. And so things just it comes down to money a lot. But we try to sneak in a lot of things when we have a little bit of capacity. Okay, anything else?
So, hello, this is Herrick.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Great.
So I first, moving to 3.1, I think you guys did a fantastic job of transitioning us across the board, especially the SciNet conglomerate of regional consortia. I know that was a big task, and I feel like the way you guys approached it with doing the sort of smaller ones first, and then the big push at the end was really smart. Um, One thing that just occurred to me was like I know that we've been going through these periodic rounds of having folks request access to sensitive species data, and you guys handle that really well in terms of like alerting the collections that will be affected by granting access to those records. Is there a way that we could obtain like a report of those, or like any I don't know, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, how could we sort of measure how much of our data are being accessed through those requests? Even
That
if it's
is,
just a condensed thing of these many requests potentially affected access to your records.
mhm. Lindsay, feel free to hop in if you have an idea, but I'm guessing that because of the way that we send out that request, we don't necessarily have a database of like, here's the request, here's how many institutions it affects. We could give you information about how many requests have come, but not necessarily whether it included data in your request. Does that match your understanding, Lindsay, or
I think so. I'd have to think about that. We haven't had a request quite like this one before. On a request about the requests.
yeah. But yeah, that's a
Cool.
great thought. Thanks for bringing that up, Herrick.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, as Walter puts in the chat, and I think that this is true, from your admin panel, you can see who has rare species reader access. So you would know the number of people.
Although sometimes Lindsay sends them just a download of the data instead of giving them access, and so you probably don't have a record of that. It
That's
might just be, how many emails have you received, Eric?
it is also along that point, it's worth just mentioning to this group that we have been in communication with NatureServe a bunch because NatureServe is the coordinating organization that all of the state heritage programs, like the state heritage programs, collect rare species data, and then they provide it to NatureServe, who does species assessments, which are legally binding assessments when developments happen. And many of the requests for rare species come from either a heritage program or NatureServe. And so we have been talking to them about potentially having an MOU that says these guys are approved for rare species reader access. And so we have asked them to come to the Symbiota support group, maybe even in February. It's not scheduled yet, but to basically make their case to you about what they do as an organization, how they use these data, and then that might streamline it a little bit. So anyway, obviously it's curator's choice of what happens to the data there. But if we're all on the same page and it's a good use of the data, we just want to make it as easy as possible for people to get the data. I think Robert and then Paula.
You're muted, Bob.
Thank you. I'm enjoying very much and impressed with the portal for the bryophytes and lichens that I'm managing the collection for. But here at Ohio State, the vascular plants, in my opinion, have like a suboptimal collection management system. And they kind of realize that we're all collegial, but I don't have a whole lot of influence, but I'd like to have a little bit more. Um, they are switching over to specify, and they're getting a new curator. My question is like, how would you recommend that I encourage them to connect with the portal, either as a snapshot or using it directly, a way that I could sort of um, enlighten them about it and make it a facilitated transition to at least having a snapshot on the Midwest Herbaria portal, or helping them see the benefits of that, which at the moment I don't think they're as aware of, and I think they could be benefited from it. So how to promote the portal use for for the vascular plants here at OS is my question.
I would say just show them. Just be like, hey, let me show you what I do with my bryophytes. Look what I can do. Look how easy it is to XYZ. Or like, look how easy it is to publish to GBIF. Like, you don't have to make an installation and stuff like that. So yeah, just connect them with the things that you think that they would find useful, and maybe they will be able to use it.
Is it, Bob, do you have access to their data?
Uh, no, not me personally, but I could. It's kind of I don't really understand the system that they're using, so I would say no.
Well, I mean, because there's on the symbiota.org page, there's just a button that says join a portal, and you
Mhm.
can fill that out for them and then just send Katie or Lindsay a file and they could upload it as a snapshot and then they could see their own records. If that's what would happen anyway, if they were going to join as a snapshot, and then they could see how easy it is.
How would uh images be hosted? Would that be something that they'd have to work out themselves? We would have to work out ourselves?
Well, we have options at KU, and so we could talk about the details of that.
Yeah. So there's any other resources that they could view on any online tutorials or something that would um
Yeah, there's a sample portal too they could mess around with. So
Yeah,
yes, we will
we
put
have our
that.
documentation, which I just put a link to in the chat. And then
Oh,
people
good.
can also use the sample portal, which I just put a link in the chat, to dink around, play in the portal, and see if it is useful to them.
Thank you. I'd love to see it happen. I think the Midwest Herbarium Portal is great, and it's a real shame that their collection isn't available to the general public, and that this is a chance, this transition is a chance where it can happen. I'd just like to sort of grease the wheels.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Paula?
Paula?
Oh, I was going to say also, I'm super happy to, if you want to send them just as a person that's at LSU to like give some input. I've worked in Specify and in Symbiota, so happy to give anyone my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, my question was just about future funding and maintaining things into the future. And you've probably thought about this, but Arctos has a per collection fee that they charge depending on the size of the collection that's input into Arctos. Have we thought about doing that for the Symbiota portals?
Yeah, I think about it all the time. And so if everyone could just put in the chat how much they are willing to pay, that would be great. That would give us a sense.
Because
Yeah.
I think what Arctos does is if it's really small, it's really not very much per year that you invest. And if it's a super large collection, that's where, the money goes up. And then if you're really tiny and can't afford it, I think Arctos has a way of submitting the data without funding. But
Mike,
That's okay.
the chat is legally binding, so you're on the hook now. Mike just
Mike's
paid for
gonna
all of
fund
it,
us
you guys,
all.
so I certainly play that game. We have a very strong commitment to low barriers to entry in Symbiota, right? So we want every collection to get in easily, just send an Excel file and your data is up. So that we're committed to that. However, we're also committed to like the ship not sinking. And so even for Mike and Al and Allison and Terry and I, we're in the California portal. And so it's an ongoing question of how many institutions could pay $500. And that would be, a department funded thing that wouldn't hurt them at all. And what kind of support we could get out of that. And so we just don't really have a strong sense of what our community is capable of doing in that regard. And we're going to have to at least talk about that. We just don't want to freak people out and scare them with the like Symbiota is a paid for thing now. We're going to try to keep it not that for as long as possible, but also there's plenty of institutions that could support it.
Thanks for bringing it up, Paula. Super important, especially as we're thinking a lot about sustainability this upcoming year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to hop into our frequently asked questions just for the end so we can make sure to get a few of those talked about. But if you have other questions that come up, feel free to throw them in the chat. Even if we don't answer them within this hour, we can always just hang on and I can answer them if you have time. Okay, so here's a couple of frequently asked questions we get. Why is my portal slow? Or why is it down? We appreciate when you let us know that they are slow or down. The slow is often, well, actually, the slow comes up for many reasons, as well as the down. So portal speed is inversely proportional to portal use. So you have a lot of people using it, your portal is going to be a little bit slower. So we've found, and I know Herrick told us about this, that there's like a particular time in the afternoon where things get pretty slow. And one of those reasons is, so SciNet, and I'll talk about this in a second, is a really big portal with a lot of collections simultaneously managing their data and searching in the database. And so when you have all of the time zones kind of active at the same time, you can get some real slowdowns. So we're working on improving that. So we're going to be putting together some grant proposals, hopefully in the future, that's going to improve that performance. But this is, as you can imagine, a huge issue that we're having to kind of redo a database to make it faster with so much data. You guys are just too successful, I guess. Some things that can cause temporary portal outages and slowdowns. Sometimes we get like too much stuff in our temporary storage. Sometimes there's too much traffic, and especially with the rise of AI, we've seen a lot of AI bots hitting our servers. We have ways of protecting against that, but sometimes that's what's slowing down your portal is not real people traffic, but AI bot traffic. Another frequently asked question is just kind of some confusion about the image uploading workflow. And this is going to be regarding if you're uploading images to be hosted by the Symbiota Support Hub. We use a thing called Globus as our little intermediary where you're uploading your images to. So often we get questions like, hey, I uploaded images to Globus. Where did they go? They just like disappeared and I don't see them anymore. Well, if you're used to using a previous version of uploading stuff called Cyverse, or if you used Dropbox with us in the future, you were probably used to like seeing those images in the folder and being able to kind of curate them. Well, Globus is a bit different for us. So you as a user upload things into Globus, and overnight they go into a kind of like a staging server where they're waiting for us to process them. And then the next morning, a person has to run a process that puts all those images in our database. And then also, well, not in our database, sorry, in our image hosting servers, and then also link all those images to your specimen records in the database. And this happens at the same time using one process. So what this looks like is actually me getting a little report every morning that says who uploaded images into a portal or into Globus. So then I go in to those collections and I go down to the processing toolbox, and they have a saved image processing profile called import from Globus or something like that. And then I look at these, make sure that all these parameters are correct. The only one that I constantly have to change is this replace existing image. So that means that if an image already exists, like if I had an old version and now I'm bringing a new version, it's just going to replace it instead of copy it. And then if I click process images, it's going to go through the list. There's nothing in there right now, so you're not going to see anything.
Darn it.
I know, sorry. We need to get some more images processed.
They're all on the desktop right now waiting for you.
That's true. I need to go in. So you will see then a log, and let's see who has done some. I know LA has done some recently. You'll see a log that goes through and says, okay, for this record, I created a new record because I couldn't find a matching catalog number. For this record, I did the same thing. And then it will tell you, in this case, like, oh, this might have been a corrupted image, so it didn't upload correctly. I'm showing you this not because I want you to go and do this processing. I'm showing it to you because you could If you are up earlier than me on the next morning after you put your stuff in Globus, you could go and run the processor and import the images yourselves. More importantly, though, this is where your image processing logs are, and you can find out what happened to each individual image that came in. So if you're like, man, I don't see like the same number of images that I expected to show up, you can go into the log and see, well, did the same amount of images even make it into the staging server, or were some of them corrupted or something like that? So that's just kind of a behind the scenes look. We actually kind of talked about this briefly. Lindsay, do you want to cover this part?
Sure. So question we often get, how do I get access to redacted location data? So there are a few ways you can do this. So oftentimes, if you're just looking for access to a few collections, we encourage you to reach out to the listed contacts on the collections profile if it's just like a handful. But say you are a land manager or natural resource manager, and it really makes more sense for you to have like larger access in the portal, you can fill out the form that we have linked on this slide. And then what we do is we search for all of the records that are relevant to your request and are also redacted. And then we reach out to the collections that maintain those records to give them an opportunity to review the request before moving forward with giving the account any permission or downloading any data and sending it to whoever requested it. And then an important note is that if you are a collections administrator, we remind you that please add hub@symbiota.org to your contacts just to make sure that you're getting those notifications. I haven't heard anybody saying that this has been an issue for them. Largely, people seem to be receiving them, but just a reminder, if you are not getting those messages, it could be because maybe you have a firewall or something set up on your email account. But I think we've covered this fairly extensively already. Are there any more questions about this?
Great, thanks. I wanted to do another brief reminder about what is SciNet, because we often get a little bit of confusion about why SciNet relates to the Consortium of Midwest Herbaria and Torch and all these other things. Well, SciNet is a huge database of over 400 herbarium collections. I think it's 450 at this point, with a dozen front-end doors to access that same database. So here's kind of what it looks like. You could enter in through SciNet and look at the same database. You could enter in through the Midwest Herbaria, look at the same database. Oh, and I thought I updated that. Well, it should say 457 collections. So it's much, and that's just ones that have data in them. Like we have some like skeletal collections, so we're up at like 480. It's crazy. You guys are awesome. So when you log into one portal in the SciNet network, so if you log into Torch, you can use your SciNet username and password. Or if you log into NANCH, the North American Network of Small Herbaria, you could use your Torch password. So don't create another account on each of those portals. And if you're confused about like, well, how do I know which one is in SciNet and which one is not, you can look at the list of categories on your collections page. Or you can go to the Symbiota portals index, and there's like a little indication about which ones are part of SciNet. So ones that aren't in SciNet is CCH2, so California is special at this point. The Consortium of Northeastern Herbaria, Open Herbaria, Neotropical Flora, All Asia Herbaria, and Africa Herbaria. So those are portals that are not part of the SciNet network. Okay, those were just a couple of the FAQs that I thought were pertinent to share at this time, and we can open it up for any more remaining questions people might have that might have come from those FAQs or otherwise. Jim asks, the first 3,500 records of my beetle collection does not have latitude, longitude entries. I can use the new search feature to select records with the same locality info. How do I batch add lat long to selected records? Excellent question, Jim. Let me point you to our batch georeferencing tools. So there's an extra slash in there, but the link should take you to our batch georeferencing protocols. Any other questions, thoughts, feedbacks? Well, thanks everyone for your participation. Again, it's been great to see you all. And Megan has a question. How to figure out which snapshots are not showing up on another portal. We snapshot to the Toretto portal, but the number matched different for us based on our project label. Oh, you know what? That was a question I was planning to answer. So real quick, when a snapshot is updated, like if you have a snapshot in the All Asia portal that's coming from your SciNet portal, that snapshot brings in new data. It does not delete records that are in the snapshot that don't match the incoming live data set. So there comes, after a few snapshot updates, to have some extra just kind of floating in there. Usually, on like a quarterly basis, I will go in and delete all of those spare records that are just kind of floating in there. But it doesn't happen automatically because sometimes snapshots are actually kind of live managing, even though they're not supposed to in certain portals. And so we don't want to just like automatically delete all records that don't match because they might actually be trying to do something useful there. So are you finding, Megan, that you find more records than you expect in your snapshot or fewer?
Fewer. I was like, she's gonna hate me for this.
No, that's not. That means that the filter that's bringing your data in is not grabbing all of your data. So there's
Okay.
something wrong with like the way that the data are being filtered.
Okay. Maybe we can talk about this outside of the.
Yeah, shoot me an email.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks everyone for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your month and your week, and happy 2025.
Hi, everybody.